Thank you very much, Chancellor and Co-Chancellor and Vice Chancellor. Thank you for doing me the great honor of giving me the Laureate Award and inviting me to speak. I'm very, very honored. Thank you. It says Jnanam Amritam, and it says education for life. And obviously there's a contradiction between those two, because Amritam lasts beyond life. So what we really have is, let's reconcile the contradiction. What is it about? Of course, education is for life. But there's more than a single life which creates a nation. And I think it's basically the collective endeavor of knowledge, jnana, which is what lasts forever. But of course, for knowledge to last forever, it has to be renewed constantly. And I think, in a sense, what I see India's challenges today is, in a sense, really contrasting the documentary we just saw. Of someone who was born in 1933, and of course, he was born in an industrial family, a business family. But in 1933, if you go back and look at what people were writing, even up to 1940s, there was really no certainty that India would become independent. It may seem surprising, but you go back and look even at Nehru's discovery of India during the war in Ahmednagar Fort in 1940s. Yes, it was going to happen, but there were lots and lots of doubts and uncertainties. By the same time, there was this ambition that as and when India becomes independent, it would occupy a unique position in the world. To begin with, that uniqueness was going to be moral. It's going to be from the values that Mahatma Gandhi had taught us and embodied in his life during the independence movement. And somehow the idea was that India would be a moral exemplar to the world. But you know, in a sense, that's almost like a child who believes that because what his or her parents have told them, they are unique. But every child's parents have told them they're unique. So when you go to the school, you suddenly realize that you're in a bunch of students who all think they're good. So India had to grow up. India had to grow up that moral leadership is not God-given. The uniqueness of your status in the world is not automatic. It has to be actually won. And what I have seen during my lifetime in the transition, and you saw some of that in the documentary, that in a sense, what India had to show to the world, that it was not unique for any particular special historical reasons, but because in a race to the top, it could actually perform. And perform without using any excuses. We could no longer, after a while, use excuses. Oh, we were very good 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, but this enemy or that enemy or the third enemy held us back. Not our fault, somebody else's fault. That does for a while. It doesn't do forever. Eventually, a country has to get out there and say, here we are, and we are good because we can prove to you under objective conditions, be it research, be it knowledge, be it production, be it performance in sports, be it performance in arts, whatever. A country has to prove itself. And I think in it, the way I see India's development over the last 68 years since independence, is that to begin with, there was this childhood and teenage rebellion, and excuses were made, and explanations were found as to why we were not doing the best we could. I think some time ago, perhaps in 1991, with the transition to a new economy, and even more recently in the last election, I think there has been a sea change in attitude of how India sees itself. I can sort of tell you that when I was age of some of the students here, our horizons were very limited. At the age of 21, I did not think that I would stand before you like this, having been abroad or lived abroad or done things abroad. We sort of always thought that, well, we'd be really better than them. They were actually on top of us. And somehow they were more superior, whatever, stronger, whatever. And of course it was all a fraud because they'd stolen all knowledge from us. And you know, the problem today is that we have now realized that excuses will no longer do. But also that we have had the potential all the time in India to be able to harness our talents, to be able to direct talents to productive uses, and to enter the challenge, the marathon, which is being run across the globe all the time, and in that marathon, score some victories. When globalization first was mooted 25 years ago, it was said that, oh, you know, these global companies, these American global companies, they're not really truly global, because they always appoint their own people. They will never appoint us. But global companies don't become global by being local. They only become global by being truly global. And what we see today, of course, we only notice Indians getting to the top. And so we say, now there are Indians who are at the top of Microsoft, of, various international companies. In Silicon Valley, there are people who can run top companies. Indra Nooyi can run a top-class multinational, so on. But what we have to notice is that it is not just Indians who have got to the top of American companies, but lots of other non-Americans have also got to the top. Because a grown-up country doesn't actually put a special tariff on recruiting their own people. A grown-up country recruits the best. And a grown-up country trains people who don't necessarily just want to stay at home and do good, but a grown-up country trains people who can go anywhere and do good. So India's challenge today is to basically stop making excuses about why we cannot do something or other. I think there's enough proof now that if Indians put their mind to it, they can accomplish. And as was said in the citation before my citation was read, the man who got the first Laureate award showed in the Meghnad that there is nothing Indian science and technology cannot do. I mean, the Meghnad thing was an absolutely global, world-class, top event. And in itself, when you think about all the handicaps which might have gone against an Indian effort like that, very little technology that we deploy, be it a nuclear bomb or whatever it is, has ever been accomplished at home. But Meghnad showed that it can be done. It can be done, as the Prime Minister said, Gravity, the film, cost more money than Meghnad did. And that shows you that India can not only do the best, but it can also do it most economically. Now see, that is a perspective in which we are looking at the future. It's no longer possible for us to say, oh no, we can't do that because X, Y, and Z. If we can't do that something, it's our fault. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings, as Shakespeare character Cassius says in Julius Caesar. Now all excuses are gone. So the big challenge for India is, can India actually put it together so that people know India's potential? India has to show that it can realize its potential. And that's why I like the other part of the title, of opportunities for Indian youth in the global economy. I no longer want people to dedicate themselves to serving the country. Forget about that. The country is not served by staying in the country. The country can also be served by going somewhere else. And I think this is, again, the great opportunity for the Indian youth. That now the world is your oyster. For the first time, one can say that in the 21st century, any Indian youth, man or woman, properly educated, hardworking, and able to think for themselves, and the last is the most important, the ability of independent thinking. If you can do those three things, then I think the sky is the limit. Again, to do that, we have to overcome lots and lots of challenges. I find that people who want to claim greatness for India dwell more on the past than on the future. They extol our old learning or old practices and things like that. The traditions of knowledge building and so on. But what's remarkable about all those knowledge traditions is that they were, by and large, devoted to repeating what your teacher told you. Very few people actually say to the teacher, no, you're wrong. I know better than you, and therefore I'm going to do better than you. And I very strongly believe that we really need to inculcate not the tradition of obedience, not the tradition of following what you're told, but saying, no, I can do better than this. I know more than you do. I'll think my way through. I will solve the problem that you have not been able to solve for all these years. Now that is a difficult thing to say, and a rebellious thing to say. But ultimately, knowledge, good knowledge, new knowledge, comes from, sort of within, but comes from the desire to be original, to be different, to be difficult, to be able to debate, to be able to disagree, and to be able to convince by argument and demonstration of results that yes, you can do better, and therefore people ought to follow you. This is, after all, how in business new products are invented. This is how people go into new channels and open new markets. This is, in a sense, what an entrepreneur really means. An entrepreneur is the person who innovates. And by innovation, we mean that he or she basically does something which has not been done before. There's a French author, very famous French author called Jacques Cocteau, who was a filmmaker and a painter and a sculptor and all sorts of things. And he says something very interesting. He says people say, so-and-so opened the doors to this big new area of endeavor. He said that Picasso opened the door to Cubism. And he said, no, Picasso didn't open the door to Cubism. The door was open. Picasso saw it and went through it and closed it behind him. Once Picasso had done Cubism, nobody else could do Cubism like that. He was the first to do it. The rest were just followers. That's what a pioneer is. A pioneer walks through an open door. The door is always there, but you have to see the door is open. And therefore you stop going after things which have already been done. You do things which nobody else has done. Now that sort of originality, that sort of spirit of questioning, rebellion, debate, disagreement, innovation, that is what India actually now needs. India needs not repetition, replication, 1,000 times over of what we already know. That's fine. What we know is we know. But eventually, progress comes from change. And change comes from a collective effort to realize our potentials. Now, India obviously has lots and lots of challenges. Since I don't really have all that much time, let me sort of say something on that. I think one of the biggest challenges India has is of eliminating gender discrimination. That India basically is playing way below its weight because it is wasting a lot of talent of Indian women. And I think, in a sense, more and more we ought to ask ourselves the questions. Why are so few women at the top? It cannot be because they don't have the ability, because I believe ability is sort of randomly but equally distributed among people. Obviously, some people are smart, some people are not, but I don't think it has to do with the sex of the person concerned. So we clearly are underperforming in terms of realizing our potential. Also, during my life in the UK, I've lived in London for 50 years. There's an immense ability among people who are, in an old-fashioned word, disabled, who have one or other problems. And again, our neglect, in India's neglect of the disabled is shocking. We have a law whereby every building, every public building in the UK has to be disabled friendly. I invite you to go to Parliament in Delhi, and it's the most disabled unfriendly place I've known. And it was very painful to see a very distinguished cabinet minister, a good friend of mine, who had to negotiate steps, and he just didn't have, he needed a wheelchair, and the wheelchairs couldn't go over the steps. And nobody even noticed it. I've had a colleague in the UK politics, a man who was in the House of Commons, a cabinet minister, in the House of Lords, who was blind, David Plunkett. And he carried on. He said, my blindness is not my problem, it's other people's problem. They think I can't do something because I'm blind. I know I can do it. And again, here we have this amazing ability, but we're neglecting it. And I think finally we have to actually seriously face the problem of social inequality. It's not a problem of whether you give reservations or not. Reservations have now become too politically entrenched to be undone. But we ought to have the ambition that at some stage the nation will not need reservations anymore. And that ought to be the aim of India. That basically whatever the historical and cogent reasons there were for having reservations, eventually we ought to be able to go back to the belief that people are, as I was saying before, have talents which are more or less randomly distributed, uniformly among people, and that yes, there may be obstacles. It may be of physical ability, it may be of lack of parental income, it may be of location of where you live, but that has nothing whatsoever to do with the social or caste status. That is where I think we have failed as a nation. We have lacked the ambition to say, yes, we will provide affirmative action, but we will have an end date by which we will say, India is a nation of equal citizens. So these are the challenges which I think India faces. And I do believe that, in a sense, the first part of my title of emerging challenges is answered by the second part of it. Basically, the young people who have to solve those problems. Because we have been here, we have made the mess, we are leaving it behind you. This is your inheritance. We're sorry we didn't get you better, but you can now do better. And I think it is your problem. And I'm sure that given the ability that I see around me, among the young people of India, you are going to be successful. Therefore, I congratulate you. Thank you very much.